Hey folks, this is our second 30-minute English lesson. The first wasn't really 30 minutes at all. In fact, it was just an introduction to the type of thing we're going to be doing in future online. Just to remind you, if you're watching this, and for example, if you're not a Gmail user, the only way to participate or to join these classes is if you have a Gmail, a Google Mail account, unfortunately. But even if you're a Yahoo or a Hotmail user or something like that, you can have a separate Gmail account specifically for these classes. It's free, the classes are free, and it's an easy way to get started. Okay, we're just going to wait one moment now because I know some people are clicking here. They're just joining this so they can watch. They're not actually in the class right now. They're just observing. So we'll just give it 1 minute. I'll just click through here. Okay. Of course, we're broadcasting live here. I'm in ULearn at the minute. It's a pretty grey day outside, but at least it looks pretty sunny in this office thanks to all the lighting I have around me. Let's get started with the lesson though. So in the first introductory lesson, I showed you guys an example of what we would be doing, and I specifically focused on the idea of idioms and how those are so important in that native English speakers use a lot of idioms every day. There are some that are very, very popular, others are not so popular. But for students learning a language, it can be very difficult because idioms, they're not necessarily literal. They often, you say one thing, but you're meaning another. They can be metaphorical, or, they can be quite tough, I suppose, to understand. But what's crucial then to remember is that if you're an English language learning student, you simply have to learn these, and you just have to, be ready to understand them. If a native speaker, uses an idiom, for example, like references shortcuts or things like that, or being out of one's depth, which are the two idioms I gave you in the first introductory lesson, if you can recognize those, then that's fantastic. If you've never heard the idiom before and you've never studied it, then you're not really going to understand what the person is saying. And then there's a bit of a communication breakdown, let's say. So let's jump right in. We're looking at idioms again today, and I've got 2 more idioms for you. So I'm just going to share my screen and give you a look at what we're doing. So idioms 2, that's our first page. I'll scroll down. And here we go. A. You see a picture of a chap there. He's in an interview. I'll just read this out. I did an interview yesterday for a new job. I expected it to be difficult, but it wasn't difficult at all. It was a piece of cake, actually. Okay? Now, what I just said a moment ago, if you're hearing that for the first time and you've not been introduced to the idiom we're going to look at, and you hear that last sentence, it was a piece of cake, actually, then you might wonder, why is Steve talking about cake in this example? What's that got to do with anything? What's the connection between cake and interviews, for example? Well, let's take a look at that right now. So here's the idiomatic expression. Again, that little section. I did an interview yesterday for a new job. I expected it to be difficult, but it wasn't at all. It was a piece of cake, actually. Right, as I just explained, it was a piece of cake. A piece of cake. That's the idiom we're going to be talking about. Now, if you're watching this right now, I suppose you can go online, you can check out what's the meaning of this. But before you do that, just ask yourself, it was a piece of cake. Is there any literal notion there that can give you the meaning of this idiom? Is there anything literal in that can give you the idea? The answer realistically is no. It was a piece of cake. There's no real connection between cake and the meaning of this particular idiom. So let's go back to that screen and I'll explain exactly what it means. Okay, It was a piece of cake, actually. There it is, highlighted. It was a piece of cake. Now, for the meaning, let's take a look. A piece of cake. The interview was a piece of cake equals or means the interview was not difficult, or the interview was easy. Okay, it's a very, very simple idiom, but it's one that we use all the time. You're going to hear native speakers using this particular idiom on a very, very regular basis. So, for example, John asks Steve, Steve, how was the interview? I say, oh, it was a piece of cake. No problem. It wasn't difficult. It was a very, very easy interview. Okay, so a piece of cake. Now, the thing for you to do right now, though, if you're watching this, is try to think of your own example. For example, think of an interview again, or say if you did a test, say a driving test. Okay, so you do your driving test, and after your test, you're chatting with your friends, and one of your friends asks you, quite naturally, how was the driving test? Was it difficult? Was it tough? Did you find it very challenging? All you need to do is say, no, it was a piece of cake. Simple, easy, not difficult. Okay? So that's our first idiom. It was a piece of cake. Let's go back to our screen. Okay. Here is one for you to do. Very simple, obviously. I had an English exam yesterday. It was 2 hours long, but I finished in 30 minutes. It was a piece of cake. Okay? Now, let's check the concept of that using this example here. We know that a person had an exam, and the exam was supposed to last 2 hours, but this person was able to finish it in 30 minutes, in 25% of the time he should have taken to do it. So it wasn't difficult for this guy. It was very, very easy. It was a piece of cake. Okay? So the next time somebody asks you about an exam you did, and if it was in fact an easy exam that you did, you can simply say it was a piece of cake. And he'll think, wow, your English is fantastic. Or if he doesn't know the idiom, he'll ask, why the hell are you talking about cake? I'm talking about an exam. But of course you studied your idiom, so you know exactly what it means. Okay, let's continue on then. So that was our first idiom today. There is a point we need to look at there. I'll show you the screen again. It was a piece of cake, of course, that was the answer. There was one word in that initial section. I said it was a piece of cake actually. If I show you the first section again up here. I did an interview yesterday for a new job. I expected it to be difficult, but it wasn't at all. It was a piece of cake actually. I just need to point out that actually does not mean now or presently. Okay, a lot of speakers from Latin, whose language is a Latin language, Spain, Italy, Portugal, and Brazil, for example, actually doesn't mean now. It doesn't mean presently. So what does it mean? It means in fact. Okay, so it was a piece of cake actually. In fact, it was a piece of cake. You could put it at the end also, like actually. You could say it was a piece of cake, in fact. Normally we use it at the start of a sentence. Okay, so be careful with that. Actually, it doesn't mean now, it means in fact. Right, so now we're going to move on to our second idiom. We've seen a piece of cake, we've seen actually. Let's take a look at something else. Back to our screen. Okay, B. There's a nice image of somebody getting punched in the face. A handsome chap by all accounts. Did you see the news last night on TV? The president punched a cameraman in the face. The media is going to have a field day with this one. Okay, now let's look at that again very quickly. Did you see the news last night on TV? The president punched a cameraman in the face. The media is going to have a field day with this one. Now, depending on your level, you might know the idiom that I'm going to refer to, or if you look at it closely, you should be able to have a good idea. All of this language here is quite literal, except maybe one expression that is sticking out, the idiom in question. So let's go down. Where's the idiomatic expression? Idiomatic is the adjective form of idiom, of course. Did you see the news last night on TV? The president punched a cameraman in the face. The media is going to have a field day. Here's our idiom. The media is going to have a field day with this one. Now, like our first idiom, like a piece of cake, let's ask ourselves, is there any connection between the president of a country or the president of an organization punching somebody and the words field day? I mean, there's no real literal connection, okay? So I'm just trying to emphasize the fact that a lot of idioms do not have a literal connection to the words that you use to make them, okay? So a field day, there's no literal connection there. So what does it mean? Again, let's go back to our screen. To have a field day is to have an enjoyable time or to have a great time doing something you like. Okay, let's go back up a second now. Let's look at our little example again. The president punched a cameraman in the face. The media is going to have a field day with this one. So the media is going to have an enjoyable time, or the media is going to have a great time doing something they like. So here I have a concept checking question. Let's check what's going on here. Why is the media going to have a field day? Or why is the media going to enjoy the fact that the president punched someone? It might be obvious. The answer to that question might be obvious to you, say in your mind. You might understand the idea. But why is it that the media are going to have a field day? Why are we using the expression field day? Why does the media enjoy this? Okay, so that's why we're asking a concept checking question. Let's have a quick look at the answer, or some possible answers. Okay, some possible answers would include: the media is going to have a field day because, one, they will sell more newspapers. Okay, so the media is happy because they will sell more newspapers. Or two, more people will watch the news on TV. Okay, so more people are going to watch the media, the news on television that evening. For example, number three, the media enjoys criticizing people. So a lot of people believe this, that the media enjoys criticism, and you know, if something happens, for example, like a president punching somebody, the media is going to enjoy this story. And four, of course, the media enjoys negative news. Okay, so we know now the idea of a president of a country, let's say. Just imagine Barack Obama punches a news reporter. That would be incredible for the media. They'd love that. They'd have a field day, okay? The media would have a field day with the idea that the president punched somebody. That would be all over the news. Every newspaper that you look at, it would have a picture of the president punching somebody. Every time you turn on the news, there would be a story about the president punching somebody. So the media would have a field day. Okay, so that's our second idiom today. Let's look at another example of field day. Back to our screen. Okay, John loves watching sports on television. He has during the Olympics. So what does John have during the Olympics? Now, John could have anything. John could have a bowl of popcorn. John could have a few beers with his friends. But specifically, if John loves watching sports on television, then he has a field day during the Olympics. And why does he have a field day? Well, remember, to have a field day means to have an enjoyable time doing something you like, or to have a great time doing something you like. So John loves watching sports on television. He has a field day during the Olympics. He has a great time watching the Olympics. Now, Again, this would be an opportunity for you guys to think of more examples like that. So, for example, if you really enjoy reading, you could say you could have a field day in your favorite bookshop. Or perhaps if you went to a library. For example, we've got Trinity College, the famous university in Dublin. It's just across the park over there. For people who enjoy books and literature, going to the famous library in Trinity, you know, you could have a field day going there. You have the Book of Kells, for example, and lots of older texts and things like this. So that would be an example of somebody having a field day. You really like books and you go to a famous library. Okay. Other examples might include, let me see, if somebody really enjoys dancing, well, he'd have a field day going to a nightclub, because then he can go and dance all evening, for example. Okay, so to have a field day means to do something and to enjoy doing something a lot. Okay, now let me just point out with this. So the idiom has the verb to have a field day. In the past tense, then I would say I had a field day. Tomorrow, perhaps I might say I'm going to have a field day, or I will have a field day. So it follows the typical grammatical structures that we use for tenses, past, present, and future. Okay, right, let's just go back to our screen for 1 second then. And let's do a quick review. So in today's lesson, which is probably not going to be 30 minutes, I think we could probably wrap this up a little faster, but we looked at three points. One, the fact that we learned a new idiom, a piece of cake. Okay, you'll remember that a piece of cake refers to something that's easy or something that is not at all difficult. The examples we had included somebody doing a test, and he was supposed to stay in the test for 2 hours, but he finished in 30 minutes, and it was a piece of cake. Or the idea of somebody doing a driving test, and it's not difficult, it was a piece of cake. Okay. Now, like I mentioned about have a field day, it's the same for piece of cake, for example. Yesterday I did a test, it was a piece of cake. Right now I'm doing a test, it is a piece of cake. Okay, so these idiomatic expressions, they do, of course, fit into the normal structures of the language that we use. Okay, let's go back to our screen. We'll continue our review. B, the second point that we looked at was the adverb actually. Now, try to remember, what did I mention about this word actually? A lot of students make mistakes with this, students in particular from Italy, Spain, South America, Brazil, Portuguese speakers, for example. Actually does not mean now. It doesn't mean at this present time. Actually means, let's go right back up, in fact. The example, of course, using the idiom we had was, it was a piece of cake, actually. Or, in fact, it was a piece of cake. Okay, very simple. Actually doesn't mean now, it means in fact. Okay, let's continue with our short review. The final thing then we looked at today was C, to have a field day. I've just given you some examples, of course, with having a field day. You like books, you go to a library, you have a field day. You like dancing, you go to a club, you have a field day, you enjoy dancing. Okay, so 2 new idioms, a piece of cake and to have a field day, and a quick look at the use of the word actually. So those are the key points that we're covering in today's lesson. We're going to wrap it up there. Thank you very much if you've been watching, and we'll see you again soon. Take care. Bye-bye.